For a long time, fish have been thought of as primitive, simple-minded, and almost reflex-driven animals. But that picture is starting to change in a lot of new evidence. More and more studies are popping up suggesting that fish can rival mammals and birds in measures of intelligence. In this video, I want to walk you through what the science actually says. We'll look at compelling examples of fish intelligence and why it matters. Perhaps the most common misconception about fish is that they have bad memories. But is that actually true? Let's look at what the science says. Angelfish showcase the ability to memorize patterns in time and space. There was a study that had them in a tank for 4 weeks, and they were fed according to a schedule. And after 4 weeks, they started to show anticipatory behavior. They knew where in the tank they were going to be fed, and they knew when they were going to be fed. But how long do fish remember a lesson that they've learned? Well, for the mighty pike, the answer seems to be at least up to a year, maybe even more. There was a study that looked at whether or not pikes would avoid hooks based on prior experiences with hooks. And what they found was that a year after the pikes have been hooked, they showcased much more, significantly more avoidance towards these hooks compared to pikes that have never been hooked before. But that's not all. Not only can they remember their own experiences and learn from them and adjust their future behaviors based on their past experiences, they can also simply observe other fish and learn from them. A study on Trinidadian guppies found that just from observing other fish's foraging routes, these guppies would adopt these new foraging routes simply by observing it. So, do fish have bad memories? Well, considering the fact that I couldn't remember where I left my keys or even what I had for breakfast last morning, then I'm no one to judge. Now, this ability to memorize does of course serve different purposes, one of which being the ability to recognize individuals. There was a study that trained guppies to recognize individuals of their own species, and they managed to recognize up to 15 different individuals. And not only that, the researchers took this study a step further. They took away the guppies and isolated them for 5 weeks. And after 5 weeks, when they were reintroduced, they could still recognize those 15 members of their own species. So fish can recognize other fish. Big whoop. It's not like they can recognize themselves. Can they? Well, a classic example of finding out whether or not an animal is self-aware is by placing a mirror in front of it and see how it reacts, if it can recognize itself. A group of researchers would mark cleaner wrasses with bright red dots that were supposed to resemble the presence of a parasite. Now, these cleaner wrasses would then observe the mirror, their own reflection, notice this pseudo-parasite mark, and then continue on to start scratching away at this pseudo-parasite on a bunch of rocks. Now, the fish wouldn't have been able to do that if it didn't realize that the fish that was staring back at it in the mirror was itself, and that it had something on its body that needed to be scratched off. Now, the same researchers went a step further and found out that these fish were able to recognize their own faces in photographs. I mean, that's something that some of the smartest mammals can't even do. The ability to recognize other individuals as well as oneself is quite handy, especially when it comes to social interactions and, dare I say, manipulation tactics. Hear me out. We are gonna talk about the amazing cleaner wrasses once again. This seems to be like the Einstein version of fish. A study was describing the cleaning behavior of cleaner wrasses. As the name suggests, they eat the gunk between other fish's teeth. But they are also able to recognize which of their clients are local and which of their clients are transient or non-local. And what they found was that the cleaner wrasses would prioritize cleaning the teeth of the non-local clients simply because they were more likely to leave, whereas the local clients were more likely to stick around and therefore secure a meal for the cleaner wrasse later on. That's actually quite sophisticated thinking if you think about it. And not only do they have an understanding of which clients to prioritize, they sometimes, these sneaky little fish, they are known to cheat their clients by pretending to bite off gunk between their teeth, but actually take a bite off of their gum tissue, which understandably causes a frustrating reaction from the client. But the cleaner wrasse will then give what can only be described as back rubs to the client in order to apologize. At least that's what the researchers are hypothesizing is the explanation for this behavior. So do with that what you will. They never cease to amaze. It seems like this little fish knew exactly what we was doing. So fish can cheat one another. That's good to know. But do they also know how to play nice and work together? Well, let's look at an example. A study found that groupers would recruit moray eels and hunt together. They would have the moray eels flush out the prey from the crevices of the reef, and the grouper would be waiting on the side of which the prey would escape and catch it. Now, sometimes the grouper gets the meal, sometimes the moray eel gets the meal, but they both benefit from this team up. This kind of coordination and teamwork is really rare in the animal kingdom, but it happens more than you would think, and it happens in fish as well. A trait that we associate with highly intelligent animals is the use of tools. We've used that to separate humans from animals for a long time until we found out that animals use tools as well. Like crows use tools, and a lot of primates will use tools. But fish can actually use tools too, and there are concrete examples of this, which I'm going to get into now. So some wrasses have been observed to use rocks to crack open shellfish, and some species of catfish will lay their eggs on a leaf so that if they sense danger or they have any other reason to change their location, they can pick up the leaf with all its eggs and move them very conveniently, very efficiently, very quickly. So it seems that fish also have the ability to be quite tech savvy. What if I told you that some fish can even do math? Okay, maybe that's a bit of a stretch. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. It's not like they can do addition or multiply or division, but they do seem to have an understanding of basic arithmetic. Not necessarily a number system, but they can at least tell less from more. A study found that goldfish were able to distinguish between 10 and 15. They had these cards of 10 dots and 15 dots, and the fish would accurately determine whether or not it was 10 or 15 dots on the cards with an accuracy of 91%. So what can you take away from this? Well, despite lacking a neocortex, fish demonstrate learning, memory, and problem-solving skills that were thought to be exclusive to mammals and birds. We have also learned that brains can look very different but have similar functions. It seems that nature finds a way. The perception of fish being these simple-minded, primitive, and almost reflex-driven animals just doesn't align with these studies. And it does raise a rather uncomfortable question. Why did we assume so to begin with? But that's all for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.